Hey folks, welcome to another edition of the Patreon Q&A here on the Golden Bolt. It's what it says on the tin. For as little as $1 a month, you can join the Patreon crew over at patreon.com/thegoldenbolt. And in addition to some perks like access to the Golden Bolt Discord server, early and or ad-free access to videos, and much more, you also get access to the Patreon Q&A feed, where you can ask me any question, and I answer them here in video form. This time around, I only have a couple questions, but they are some pretty substantial ones, so I'm sure we'll still go the usual length. So I'm going to open with AE Double, who has two questions as normal here. What do you consider some good ways to get people engaged with playing multiplayer games for a long while? Some I feel are either community-based, like gatherings to do a thing in MMOs, or target-based, like building your rank in a fighting game. And then his second question is, let's play some games sometimes. I promise I'm only adequate enough thanks to my slow button reaction time pressing. I'll answer the second question first with another question of my own. Do we want Patreon game nights? Because that's a thing I've thought about doing at some point here or there, and I think there's enough patrons now that we could probably start doing something pretty reliable with that, either in general or maybe like a Patreon/Twitch sub, Mario Kart or Smash Night, something like that. Do we want that? I know you're gonna all say yes, but give me an actual answer too, because more things to do is cool, but sometimes people just say yes to more things and then don't actually want to do them. So I want to know if you would want to do those things. Let me know. To the first question, getting people engaged with playing multiplayer games for a long while. See, the easiest option is to get them addicted with microtransactions. No, I think one of the issues that we've talked about this actually over on the Crubcast. That's my podcast channel. If you go to youtube.com/@CrubOfficial, that's a cheap plug. You should subscribe there. It's even cheaper. We've talked about this before, especially Brody has brought this up. A lot of us miss when multiplayer games only had to exist for 2 months. Like, every game had tacked on multiplayer, and it only lasted 2 months, and then you went back to your home multiplayer game, and no one expected a lot out of it. Now, that's not a smart thing to do in terms of game design. You don't want to design a thing that people are going to forget about in 2 months, but it was nice to see more novel approaches to multiplayer gaming, where you didn't have to keep up with stuff forever and make it this never-ending service or anything. For example, I really loved the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood multiplayer, just because it was so unique and it didn't have any pretense about what it was. It was just there to kill some time, and it was like there were 8 players, everyone had a target, and you had to kill your target while blending in and trying to hide from someone for whom you are the target. And so it was like a big circle of targets. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. But to go more specifically into that question, I think it's really tough, because nowadays the only way to do it is to be addicting in the non-MMO multiplayer space, and also MMOs really. And I think it's really hard to break in and stay broken in, but everybody already has their home game, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but it's really hard. Everyone has their home game, and they don't really want to branch out into another game forever, so it's tough to keep people engaged with a lot of these smaller scale, or let's call them B projects, B multiplayers. One thing I really like is a lot of games nowadays, especially like indie titles, have done like procedurally generated daily runs of like a roguelike, or like a special challenge playlist, stuff like that, where you can kind of have a never-ending stream of content without it being high effort, is a really good way to maintain. It's harder to do in multiplayer stuff, and that's why I think multiplayer stuff is best served with a user-created element. So like Halo survived for so long, not just because of this, but one of the reasons it survived for so long, and one of the reasons people kept playing Halo 3 for years, even after Reach and 4 and 5 came out, was the custom games were so good, and there was such a strong variety to them that you could do Jenga and other stuff like that. And part of the reason Halo Infinite died as quickly as it did is because they didn't really have a good custom games or Forge structure in place, because they delayed that game by a year and then delayed all the good stuff by another year. So it's really not even done yet, which is great. But I think that sort of customizability goes a long way. More so than maybe doing things like a community game night as a developer or what have you. The next question is from Tony Grizz, who asks, do you ever think of doing a video on SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom and maybe a combined video with the remake and how it came to be? It's a game that was kept very alive by a cult following and has a very rich history. I have had thoughts about doing something SpongeBob adjacent. I'm not a huge SpongeBob guy, don't get me wrong, but after the TAC video, I had a few ideas for other Nickelodeon or cartoon-based game projects. Not that TAC is a cartoon-based project, technically, but you know what I mean. And with SpongeBob, I held off for the same reason I probably wouldn't do Jimmy Neutron, because SpongeBob was handled around the same time that I was thinking about doing that by friend of the channel, Ant Dude. And I didn't want to step on toes, not that he would care, but algorithmically speaking, you know, my videos aren't going to stand a chance versus his videos of the same subject material. So I kind of held off on doing SpongeBob, and Jimmy Neutron would be the same thing because Nitro Rad did a bunch of Jimmy Neutron videos, and also I don't care about Jimmy Neutron that much, so that helps. But I am currently in the early to mid stages of a video on a different Nickelodeon series of games based on cartoons, and I'm hoping that will be an October one. That depends very much on if any other sponsor things come up where I have to bang out a quick video versus a long video, when review codes are going to come in for games such as the Spider-Man and the Sonics of the world, and even maybe Yakuza Like a Dragon Gaiden, because I don't know when any of those are going to go out. They might be the day before release, they might be tomorrow for all I know in some cases. And so that kind of makes this last quarter of the year always kind of tough, because you just don't know when publishers or PR firms are getting codes and stuff like that. So October is going to be a little bit packed as it is, but I'm hoping to have that video at least partially done and out for patrons in some capacity as like a preview, if not the whole video. And the other thing it depends on is the Ratchet PSP video, because I want that to be out in October no matter what. I don't know that it will be, but I really want it to be, and it just kind of depends on how many emails I get responses to, or if I give up on that and just make the video with what I know versus doing the deep dive where I had to wait months for back and forth with individuals on the other Ratchet stuff. Anyway, to go back to SpongeBob, I've thought about it, and I don't have much experience with the SpongeBob games, so it's something I want to hit on, and I'm going to be hitting on it tangentially with a few different projects that I'm hoping to hit this month, in some capacity, not necessarily SpongeBob, but Nickelodeon stuff or stuff published by THQ, like the Nickelodeon tie-ins. So yeah, stay tuned for those, probably eventually, to answer the question directly. And then I have another double question here. It's actually the last question of this month's Patreon Q&A. As a reminder, patreon.com/thegoldenbolt. For as little as $1 a month, you can ask your own questions, long or short. I'll give you a long answer, as you can tell. So Thomas Kuzma asks, what are my go-to gaming snacks? And then there's a second question. I'll answer the first question first. Gaming snacks. I try to avoid snacking a lot when I game, because it's a dangerous pit to fall into. But I have a pantry with, different kinds of chips, whether they're Doritos, the spicy sweet chili Doritos are fire. Those are my favorite ones. Or even Gamer Sin Cheetos. I don't usually eat those while I'm gaming, or if I do, I'm gonna not touch them with my hands somehow, and I'm not good with chopsticks, so I don't know how. Just stick my head in the bowl, I guess, maybe. Otherwise, I eat and then I game. I don't kind of take bites and then keep going. So yeah, or like an apple, like fruit. Sometimes I have an apple on the side of my desk, on a little plate or napkin, and chip at that. So That's my gaming snacks. I'm boring. And then his second question here is, franchises are weird. You either have a 40-year-long franchise like Star Wars, or you have a similarly aged franchise like Transformers that resets every 5 years, which gives exploration for different ideas of characters. Anyway, my question is, what do you think about pressing the big reset button on game franchises, and what franchise would you choose to reset? I think that it is inherently okay. I've talked about this before with Ratchet, obviously. That series is kind of like James Bond, where every time there's a new console, that usually tends to mean there's a new group of people working on those games with their own ideas for where the series should go, and I think that's always going to be a good thing, even if it turns out bad, because the flow of ideas is important, and it's what keeps a series going when you make the same game 400 times like they did Ratchet and Clank. So that's that. I think it's good. Sonic's another good example, but there's the caveat that if you're not careful, you then create multiple different fan bases that you can never please, because they're all looking for different things. So I've called that the Sonic dilemma, where Mario has been safe from it mostly because they have a good job. They do a good job juggling all the different types of Mario games, generally speaking, where other franchises like Sonic can struggle with that. So, until recently, at least, now we have a pretty good... we're getting fed with 2D Sonics, 3D Sonics, and everything in between. So I think it's a good thing. You just got to be careful about how you do it, because if you give any indication that you're going to go back to an old style, you're going to breed a lot of people that demand you go back to that style forever, and that's a tough thing to do, especially with a franchise that it's aimed at kids who then grow up with the series. Double hard. What franchise would I choose to reset? The only one that I could think of immediately when I first read this question was Sly Cooper. Not because it necessarily needs a reset, but because it necessarily needs a reset. It's one of those series where there has an outsized reputation relative to the sales performance, that it had. Sly Cooper never sold all that well. Like Ghost of Tsushima alone, and even Infamous Second Son, outsold the entire Sly series. And it's really only because of the Dutch translation and localization of Sly's 2 and 3 that the series ever increased in sales, game to game, anywhere. The best-selling Sly Cooper game sold somewhere in the 2 million range, and that's really, really good, don't get me wrong, but based on what we know, that was Sony saying, hey, the game didn't sell as well as we thought it would. It sold like 300, 400,000 copies. We're going to put it on Greatest Hits and greenlight a new game because we really like it. We don't care how it sold, and we're going to make it sell by making it a Greatest Hits game. So they willed it into continuing as a series, which kudos to them for taking that leap, because they then let Sucker Punch make Sly 2, one of the top 5 PS2 games ever made. So I would say Sly Cooper, because the games never sold super well, and you need to do a reboot anyway if you're going to reintroduce this franchise. Doubly so because of the whole Sly 4 ending cliffhanger thing. You really can't make a new Sly game chronologically without addressing that, and I don't know a way to do that unless you did it in like a comic or a cutscene that's optional, that players don't need to understand the plot of a Sly 5. Otherwise, you could do a Sly 5, I guess, as a soft reboot in the Rift Apart sort of vein. You could definitely pull that off if you can address the cliffhanger. But at that point, I think just make a new Sly Cooper series and go that way, because it's probably easier, honestly, and would probably turn out better than if you did a Sly 5. As much as I would prefer they stick with the lore that they have, because they wrote one of the most genuine and compelling trilogies of games, and tetralogies, because I'm going to count Sly 4, because yes, Sly 4 had some writing hiccups, but they really, all 4 games just do a really, really great job, with some exceptions in 3 and 4. More so 4, but I'm going to say 3 too, because you Sly 4 haters give too much credit to Sly 3. So that's the final question for this month's Patreon Q&A. Like I said, only a few folks popped in this month, partly because I forgot to update and tag everyone in the Golden Bolt Discord server. I will do that next time that a Patreon Q&A drops, or as we're getting close to the recording time for that. Again, patreon.com/thegoldenbolt. Your support really does mean the world. Hell, if you don't want to pay $1 a month, you can pay it's like $10 for a year, because of the yearly billing stuff, and that's pretty cool as well. And that sort of stuff helps me produce the videos with the quality and the relative frequency that I usually aim to do, more so in the coming months than in the past months, because I have now officially finished my first month living at my new place, and outside of getting a couple colds here and there, or a recurring cold, I guess, that came back once or twice, I've been feeling pretty good about the stuff that I've been working on, and I've been feeling really motivated to provide more, and that also means more time spent editing or contributing via editor Chris Mykonos fan. And he does great work, and he does a lot of the long-form stuff, so check him out as well, and maybe support him on Patreon as well, or just subscribe to our podcast, because he's also part of the Crubcast. Any of those things would be cool. All right, I'm going to stop plugging. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again, as always. Until next time. I'm not going to... That's it. Bye.